Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So good to see all of you. Wow, we are growing here at Namaste Village, aren't we?
Yes.
Sometimes I look out this the sea of people that are in front of me. And it's just so beautiful to know that this fire is growing and that we're coming together not by accident. We're coming together because we are called together. We're called to join, and in that joining, to feel the Spirit unfolding within us, all around us, in our families, in our communities. And for those of us who are joining here on Zoom or later on YouTube, to know that you're part of that. It has nothing to do with where you are, but has everything to do with who you are. And not your identity, not who you've claimed, not who you've believed until now, but the truth that is seen and known by God, whatever God is. The jury is still out on that one. We know that there is this all-encompassing source of love, this force of goodness that is everywhere at once. And that's really all we need to know, isn't it? What else is there really to know? To try to identify it as we identify ourselves as an identity, what good does that do us? You see, this is where we usually lose the plot. We identify ourselves as an identity, as a person with whatever attributes we claim. And so we try to create God in a similar fashion, rather than letting God create us in the image and likeness of the divine. If we're to realize that we are and have always been created in the image and the likeness of the divine, then that would mean that we are one with God, that there is no separation, that we are the living extension of the love and the loveliness of God. The love and the loveliness of God. Can we claim that? I think we can. I do know someone who does claim that rather well, actually, rather beautifully. And that is my co-presenter on every Friday morning, and that's Reverend Johannes. So I'm going to invite her to come and sit in the St. Francis chair. Good morning.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. ¿Y tú?
Bien, gracias.
That's about the extent of my
Cold.
Spanish.
Tengo frío. It's cold today.
It's chilly.
No, but we feel the
We were
flame.
talking about this in the morning,
Yeah.
to someone from Minnesota and Chicago, this is not cold.
Okay.
And someone from Puerto Rico, yes, it's cold.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is.
So good morning.
Buenos días.
Turn this down.
Say everybody, buenos días.
Buenos dias.
Ah, we should do some Spanish classes. Yes. Well, I'm teaching dance, Latin class already. Anyway, yes, I'm feeling a little bit cold, but I feel the flame of the divine that you were talking about. And your prayer was beautiful. Thank you.
Yes, that's beautiful. Okay, can you all hear us okay?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more. Okay. All right. So this morning, I want to read a little bit from one of my favorite Joel Goldsmith's books. We've been sharing a Joel Goldsmith class here this week, and I just love swimming in the ocean that he swims in. Back in the 40s and the 50s and the early 60s, he was that voice crying out in the wilderness. Prepare the way of the Lord. It's happening. It's right here, right now. And it's interesting, as I've said before, that Joel left his body right before Helen Schuckman began to hear the voice that ultimately became A Course in Miracles. Somehow I feel like that's not a coincidence. And this book here, I love the title, Man Was Not Born to Cry. Actually was first released in 1964. And that title, Man or People Were Not Born to Cry. In other words, you're not born to live in this back and forth, up and down, sometimes here, sometimes not reality. You're called truly, who you really are is called to live in the grace of God that is always unfolding easily, naturally, and to live in the joy and the passion and the expansion of that joy.
Amazing.
That's what you were born for, not to live in a small, tiny little box like we talked about yesterday. Yesterday, we talked about how perception is like this little box that we live in, and we project our thoughts onto the walls of the inside of that box and think it's the world. It's time for us to break free from that box. It's time for us to realize that what we were born for,
Yes.
what we were created for, is everything, wholeness. A word that he uses a lot, eternality. That's an unusual, he uses a lot of 1950s kind of words.
What was that word?
Eternality, the experience of the eternal.
Oh, beautiful.
What do you think about that?
Oh my God. I have been going to your classes and they have been amazing. And my husband and I go home just to talk about the awareness of so many people. Really, there's more and more and more, like here at Namaste, join us in this awakening, in this realization, in this knowing that there's more beyond what we see with our eyes or beyond what we hear. When I was a child, like 2-3 years old, I remember in my town, I was born actually in the Dominican Republic and raised in Puerto Rico. And we were near the beach. And I remember I was 2 or 3 and I would sit down and I would look at the ocean and I tried to imagine in my little mind, mentecita, like we say in Spanish, what is beyond that? So there must be like, I wanted to see beyond what my eyes were capable of seeing. And I would be like in ecstasies as a child. My mother used to, Johannes, are you okay? Are you okay, mi amor? Sí, mama. But I would be like trying to see, and that's more and more of us are really beyond, even I used to say committed, but it's like a longing, a knowing. Yes, there's more, and I want that more, and I want to see that. It's a knowing. We know what we are.
We do. In fact, that's a very good point. We do know deep down, but if you deny what you know, there is a conflict within you.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's why teach only love, because that's what we are. That's the calling. But we are more and more joining and saying yes, as you say before in the morning, to that calling more and more. So it's good. You know,
I'm wondering how many of us had similar experiences in childhood. For me, it would show up as my parents would tell me that God has always been and will always be. God was never born. Okay. So I would, in my mind, try to understand that. And I would, in my mind, go, okay, before that, no, before that, no, before that, no, before that, before that. And I would get high on trying to conceptualize eternality, that God has always been and always will be. And raise your hand if you had some form of that, or if almost everybody's got their hand raised. If there was something in you that felt called, that you felt this call to your divine source. Many of us you and I interpreted that as being called to the priesthood or to the convent.
Yes.
Do you believe she was a nun? I mean, look at her.
But I wanted to be a priest as a child. I told my mother, I want to be a priest. Yo quiero ser sacerdote. And my mom was like, mira, niña, hey, girls are no priests. So yes, so I decided the Carmel.
She was a
the
Carmelite.
Carmelite.
Mhm.
At least I tried to, but
So she went from being if I understand your progression properly, you went from being, no, you were a Carmelite after. So you were like the #1 best-selling singer in Puerto Rico. You left that to become a Carmelite and then became a math teacher.
Then I became an engineer. And then a math teacher. So I was a little bit confused.
And now here she is.
And now I'm a unity
teacher of
minister.
God.
And I guess, yes. So interesting. We all have had that. It isn't that wonderful. Every life is so interesting. I love when I sit down with somebody and we share our experiences, our life experiences, because it's so wonderful. We have our own way of reaching out.
You know, I'm feeling such joy right now, joining with you, joining with all of you. There's just such joy in this expansion, in the air, when we join with this single intention. If we wanted to, we could sit here, we could talk in very theological concepts and intellectual ideas that we would share. And what would happen? There would be a tightening. There would be a tightening around what I believe, what I don't believe, who I think is right, who I think is wrong, right? But when we share in this way, there's an expansion, because it's like we're being filled with grace, like a hot air balloon being filled with hot air, beginning to rise. We're not sinking into the mind. We're lifting above the limitations of the mind into something that the mind and the identity could never possibly understand. And there's such freedom.
Yes, it's like sharing joy, where everybody is just smiling and happy and connecting. It's beautiful.
Well, speaking of sharing joy, I want to share a little tiny bit here from this book that I was reading this morning. And I think it's going to help us expand even more. So I'm going to invite you to really hear this, not just with your ears. Jesus said they have ears, but they do not hear. He wasn't talking about the physical sense of hearing. He was saying you hear it, but you don't receive it. You don't receive it. So we're being called now to receive this, because what he's going to say in this short paragraph is everything that we need, everything that will launch us into the eternality that Joel experiences. And then after that, I'm going to ask you to respond to a few statements that Joel puts in here. So take a deep breath and see if you can truly hear these words. There is no room in your consciousness for God and you. No room in your consciousness for God and you. God lives as you. God is your life. God is your mind. God is your being. And even your body is the temple of the living God. With this realization will come the understanding or the experience of oneness, immortality, eternality, and infinity. And the conviction that you are limited only in proportion to your setting yourself up as an entity separate from God. The conviction that you are limited only in proportion to your setting yourself up as an entity separate from God. In other words, when you stop doing that, there will be no limit. No one will ever doubt immortality once they realize that God constitutes their very being. Once again, no one will ever doubt immortality once they realize and experience that God is their very being. So just take a deep breath now. There is no room in your consciousness for God and you. God lives as you. God is your life. God is your mind. God is your being, your very being. Now I'm going to say these lines and I want you to repeat them after me, but don't just repeat the words, feel them. Drink them in like you're drinking the finest glass of wine. So say these words after me. I have no need of powers. I have no need of powers because the I that I am, because the I that I am constitutes all and the only power. Constitutes the all and the only power. And it is a spiritual power. And it is a spiritual power. There are no powers beside it. There are no powers beside it. God constitutes my being and my life. God constitutes my being and my life. Again, God constitutes my being and my life. Once more, God constitutes my being and my life. And I can rest in that word. And I can rest in that word.
Wow.
God is your being. The eternal is your nature. Immortality is the path. And it's right here, right now, this moment. Joel Goldsmith is not expressing something that's different than you, outside your realm of understanding. It is you. This is you speaking to you. In the truest sense, this is you speaking to you. There's no such thing as a Joel Goldsmith, just as there's no thing as a James Twyman or a Johannes or any. There's really, in the end, only God. It's God speaking to God, the divine expressing only that which is divine, because that's all there is. If we would but welcome that. What do you think of them apples?
I was thinking two things came to my mind when in the Bible that Jesus says, I and my Father are one. You see, the claiming of course, there's no I and the Father. And if I try to understand this with my intellect, there's no way. I was feeling just to opening my heart to understand this truth, to embody, to welcome, to be, to express, to rest in God. That's what I have to say, you see, because there's no way of understanding it.
It's like looking out at that ocean and wondering what's on the other side, or trying to conceptualize the fact that God or the divinity has always been, was never born, and will never die. We can't do it with our minds. We can stretch, but we can't stretch that far. And that's just break. Be like a rubber band that ultimately breaks, needing to hold it all together conceptually. Do you believe that's really all? That's all the ego does, is conceptual mind trying to hold it together. Don't hold it together anymore. Just we're beyond words at this point. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All that's left is that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, Victoria, Teddy.
When there's no words, you call on Vicky.
Yeah.
Someone just said, when there are no words left, you call on Vicky.
All right, here's a word or two. I love Joel Goldsmith. I love Joel. I feel that Joel is so accessible because he lived in our lifetime. He died in the 60s, and it was a very, I think, conscious passing. He said he was finished. He had completed to give everything he came to give. And it is true You know, Christian Science and Mary Baker Eddy showed everyone that form wasn't our reality, and to shift into the invisible and to give treatments that help people shift. But Joel was the first one to recognize that he called it materia medical, that there's no treatment at all necessary, that all material means are unnecessary. He didn't need to know the name of a patient, he didn't need to know their disease, he just needed their request for help, to open the communion, and for him to fall into the holiness, the oneness, the presence. And as he had a 99% healing rate, which is rather incredible. And he would fall into that presence. And in all his writings, he makes it accessible by saying, you'll know when you're coming into the presence because you'll rest. You'll have a deep breath. There'll be a click within you where you just relax, where everything just falls away. Trust that click. Trust that rest. If you only get the click or the rest, that's all right. Let that open up into the wholeness. It's like peeking and getting a crack of light. That's all right. Take the crack of light, pay attention to the crack of light, and it will open up. And that's where life is. And Jimmy, you might like, I don't know if you've seen his message to Sam. He had a stepson with his second wife, Sam. And Sam, he brought Sam up with his wife, Emily, and he went to college. And he said, the only thing, if I could reduce everything I've been teaching, everything I've tried to give to you, to this young teenage boy going off to college, like any other teenage boy, he wrote a little pamphlet called Sam's Lesson to Sam, I think it is. And it was telling him, if you forget everything you ever heard in our home, everything that ever happened, remember only this. Remember, if you're on a desert island, do nothing but drop into the presence of God. That is who and what we are. That is what oneness is. It is what life is. Don't worry about anything out here. Don't treat it. Don't figure it out. Don't anything. He didn't even teach forgiveness. He taught direct contact with God. That's what he taught, holy instant. And it's true, Jesus came along in the Course and gave us the step, the process, the teaching of forgiveness that would empty us of what has been occupying our mind so that we would naturally come into the realization of this oneness. So those are the words I have to share, and I love that you're doing Joel, because that's what we do every day together. We join in a communion that we all have that click, and we rest in. We can see it in every face. We can see it and feel it in all the presence that we share. And it's almost like any of us talking are just a focus point to stay in that relaxed condition, that relaxed communion that we're in. So that's what I got today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, Joel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vicky, as always. How about you, Teddy? What would you like to share?
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, I used to read a lot of books, and there are a lot of people who think that they really have this. And and they've had experiences, but they just didn't go all the way, and they stopped. And they stopped prior to going all the way, and a lot of them became teachers and gurus. I used to read a lot of books, and I remember picking up one of Joel's books and opening it up, and I read 3 paragraphs, and I knew he had gone all the way. That's all I had to read of his. 3 paragraphs, and I knew by what he was saying that he had gone all the way. So a lot of people used to ask me, used to say to me, you've had all these experiences, why don't you write a book? And when I was given the Course, that was it. There wasn't another book needed. I mean, the Course was totally contained. It had everything that I would ever say, and that was it. It was done. There was no need for me to write a single word because I wasn't called on. And people who are, that's incredible. It's just that I read everything I needed or anybody needed in the course. And so I never did anything in that line. But somebody posted, Carolyn posted, this thing on the chat wall. When I first went to Australia, I stayed an extra week and I was coming home. And I had this experience on the plane. And I was with the, Glad and Meg, and I was with Glad, as a matter of fact. And I remember Jesus showed me this light starting in Australia and starting to go around the world. And I was confused because I was a big fan of the old man, the master teacher. And I thought the light would start with him, but it didn't. It started in Australia and slowly made its way around the world. And what happened recently was I was told the exact same thing that was in this post on the wall from Findhorn, that the light had gone around the world and people who were meant to be joined were now joined. And the strength of the light was going to create an onrush of darkness because people don't know how to respond to the light. And there were going to be crazy things happening in the world. And the crazy things that are going on in the world today are because people don't know what to do with the light underlying what's going on. And that's the stimulus for what is happening with the darkness. It stimulated the darkness, and the darkness, they come up with answers that are in the world and try to solve the problem based on what they think is the problem in the world. And the real problem is their rejection of the light. That's it. So there is this statement that Carolyn put is exactly what I was shown about a year or two ago about the light having gone around the world, people being joined, and there's going to be an onrush of darkness. And for people to just stay joined in the light and let what's meant to be happen. Because the world is going to, in a sense, crumble and fall apart. And those who are in the light are going to, in a sense, repopulate the face of the earth and develop communities such as Namaste that live by the light. And anybody who wants to live in these communities is going to have to commit to living by the light, in the light, with the laws of light. Otherwise, they're not going to be allowed to join, because the next phase is a world based on principles of light rather than darkness.
Amen. I feel that, yeah. When it hits, right? When it's true, it's true. And you can feel it land. The light has come. And yes, it's true that when the light is brightest, what is also true about the shadow? The shadow is darkest, right? When the light is brightest, that's when the shadow is darkness until it's completely dispelled. So the only answer is for us to continue to dwell in the light, not to try and solve the problems of the world, as Teddy was saying, but to allow the light to do what light does. To allow light to do what light does, to allow grace to do what grace does, what love does. And not to really just stay out of the way, right? But to be the vehicle of that, to be instruments of peace, but to resist the urge to try and solve the problem where the problem seems to be, which is outside of me in the world, and to focus only on being a vehicle and a vessel and an instrument of that light.
Yeah, to join the light. I'd like to to do the short prayer we do, Unity para Todos, my ministry in Spanish. And I'm going to do it in both languages because it's so beautiful. I feel the energy very strong here with everybody and with Vicky and Terry and of course you and yes, also my husband and I every morning read Joel Goldsmith. So this is really, it touches our hearts. So I'm going to invite you, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes and I touch my heart and I say, abro mi corazón al amor. I open my heart to love. Abro mi mente a Dios. I open my mind to God. Mi alma es una con todo el universo. My soul is one with the whole universe. Amen, amen, and amen. I wanted to say that.
Okay. What else could there possibly be? I am open. I am open. I am fully and completely open. Let's say that together. I am open. I am open. I am completely something. What did I say? Completely and wholly open. Let's do it again. I am open. I am open. I am completely and wholly open to receive your grace, to receive your love. Amen.
Amen.
This is it, guys. This is it. There's no more waiting. There's no more hoping. There's not even any more reading or studying. You can do that if you want, but none of it is required. The only thing that is required now is to open to love. Open to the grace that has already received you. Receive that now. We have been blessed with so many voices of this grace, from Joel to Vicky, Teddy to Johannes to so many others, to Eliza, to all the other amazing teachers, Calico, people, here in our chat room who have shared so deeply and beautifully, allowing that grace to flow like rivers that pull us effortlessly to that infinite ocean. All we are here to do now is to allow that current to take us, allow love to love us, and then to love in return. And so it is.
So it is. Amen.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Are we doing the prayer for protection?
We will. Thank you so much, Johannes. It's wonderful to have you here on Fridays. On Sunday, Reverend Eliza, you're doing the service on Sunday. Beautiful. So Reverend Eliza will be with us. And wow, thank you. I am just overwhelmed with joy and blessings to join with all of you. Just thank you so much. And that being said, let us share our final prayer. Those of you who live at Namaste, just hang out. We're going to do announcements afterwards, but here we go. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And so it is. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Namaste.